Hi, I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Aldermen to order on March 6th at 7:02 p.m. in the Aldermanic Chamber. The prayer will be offered by the city clerk, and Alderman Lopez will lead us in the pledge to the flag.
Half the flag is covered.
We can't.
We know what it looks like, but I just figured I'd point it out.
Almighty God, we have the high honor and serious duty to manage the affairs of our beloved city. Fill us, O God, with a spirit of unity and understanding, which enables us to face our multiple problems with a serene mind, with justice and charity for all, so that any and all decisions made by us will always be for the betterment and greater happiness of all our fellow citizens. So help us, God. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Wilshire.
Here.
Alderman Gidge.
Here.
Alderman Harriet Gathright.
Here.
Alderman Dowd.
Present.
Alderman Clee.
Here.
Alderman Laws.
Here.
Alderman Lopez.
Here.
Alderman Karen.
Here.
Alderwoman Kelly.
Here.
Alderman Jettie.
Here.
Alderwoman Malizi Gola.
Present.
Alderman Tenza.
Here.
Alderman Schmidt. Alderman O'Brien. Alderman McCarthy. We have 13 members present.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting is a public hearing on Ordinance 18006, expanding the tax increment financing development district under RSA 162K and NRO 29511, established by Ordinance 03171 and replacing the tax increment financing development program and financing plan adopted by Resolution 03197 and RO 458. As provided for in NRO 55-28, Tim Cummings, the Economic Development Director, will give a brief explanation on the ordinance prior to hearing testimony from the public. Director Cummings, would you care to join us? Director Marchand? Certainly, please do. There are a couple empty seats on the sides, wherever you'd like. Thank you for being here this evening. And the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just need to put my presentation in.
Okay. So about that snowstorm tomorrow.
I'm just going to take that to come back to it.
All right, well, Madam Chair, thank you very much for having me. For the record, my name's Tim Cummings. I'm the Director of Economic Development for the city, and with me I have Sarah Marchand, the Director of Community Development. We're here this evening asking for your adoption of an expansion of our current TIF program to include additional parcels, thank you, along the riverfront. I have a quick presentation that I would like to go over with you this evening, which is a high-level overview of TIF and the program specifically, and then getting into the Nashua program. So with that being said, TIF stands for Tax Increment Financing. It was established in the 1970s here in New Hampshire. If you want to look at the enabling statute that allows us to do it, it's RSA 162K. And essentially what it does is it allows for us to capture the new tax dollars, what we refer to as the increment, and use it for specific programs, projects, and whatnot within a certain delineated area within a municipality. In preparation for this meeting, I provided to you in advance an overview memo, February of 2018. I've recently resupplied that to you. It's on your desks this evening, which goes into a little bit more detail in terms of what the TIF is, how the TIF works, and why the TIF is a useful tool and how we currently use it here in the city. For those of you who may or may not know, we currently have a TIF for the Riverwalk that goes around Peddler's Daughter and the condominiums over by Jackson Falls. It was the start of what we hope to be a more ambitious project, and we can talk a little bit about that a little later on. I want to call your attention to the graphic on the second page of the district, which goes into how it actually works. I will speak to that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes, but it essentially gets to the heart of the conversation this evening, which is the capturing of the increment. That's that yellow visual. So enough about the memo. I'm going to quickly put a YouTube video on, which explains in more detail the general overview concept of how TIF works. And this is another part of the country, but the TIF tool is used throughout the country, and this one in particular is Indiana. And I thought it did a great job in really crystallizing how you can use the TIF economic development tool to your community's benefit. Or not.
Maybe. There you go.
A city's heart, bridges, tree-lined trails, emerald green parks, industry and commerce, the unseen that hums below, water, warmth, power. All made possible by one common economic thread: tax increment financing. A vibrant and independent community pulls itself up by its bootstraps. How? By skillfully obtaining funds to fortify growth and quality of life. Bootstrapping happens with tax increment financing.
Tax increment financing is a way to pay for infrastructure. And the idea is that we're going to get the development itself, or the owners of the newly built industry or commercial buildings to actually pay for the infrastructure that was required in order to allow them to locate in the community.
A business pays taxes on the property it builds upon. Those taxes go into the TIF to pay for the infrastructure that the business needs.
It's the TIF that really pushes you over the edge to say, we can do this. We can bring water and sewer to your site. We can buy land, turn it over to you for $1 so you can build your building, have more equity going forward, and it's easier for you to finance your building in order for you to be here.
TIF allows community leaders to be nimble, act quickly, to put an offer on the table and attract and expand new business.
The feedback that we've always gotten here in Lafayette is how well this community works together. And it's incredible. I'm not originally from Indiana. And when I came to this community, it was remarkable to me how well people work together. And that's in everything that's accomplished in the community, and most specifically when it comes to economic development. All hands on deck. Everyone works together to be able to put the packages together to attract, retain, and help companies grow. And it's been a wonderful experience for us, and I know for others coming in, much like our latest and newest addition to the community, GE Aviation.
Putting together the total incentive package between the state, the county, and the city, TIF was a big piece of that, and did help GE select this site as one of the sites to consider.
GE Aviation and neighboring Nanshan Aluminum Company needed a truck-friendly boulevard to support their businesses. TIF transformed a sleepy county road into a beautiful thoroughfare that meets the needs of manufacturers and citizens.
We also used TIF money to upgrade at the time it was County Road 350 South, and now it's Veterans Memorial Parkway, and that's a very important connection to State Road 38 and I-65 for these manufacturers that are out there, but it's also one of the main thoroughfares for the public to get in and around Lafayette. So we used the tax increment financing dollars to take from a 2-lane county road into a 4-lane boulevard, and has landscaping, new lighting, and also trails and sidewalks along it.
Purdue Research Park in West Lafayette, Indiana supports innovation, new startup businesses, and a high-quality work environment. The community and Purdue form a symbiotic partnership. Growth here was stagnating until the TIF tool became available. The majority of growth took place after Purdue Research Park became a TIF district.
With TIF funding, with that being included in a TIF district, the park has grown exponentially every year. We now employ over 4,000 people. It is the largest certified tech park in the state of Indiana. It is one of the biggest draws to this community.
Rural communities do not have the number of manufacturing plants that a city has. Yet through TIF, Carroll County, Indiana attracted Indiana Packers. The county's new industrial park charmed a California food processor to locate there.
Back in 1992, Indiana Packers promised us that they would bring in roughly 200 to 400 employees, and as today, their growth has went up to 2,100 employees working there.
We needed to be able to have those TIF dollars available to actually attract them here, and the promises that were made to invest those TIF dollars back in to infrastructure improvements, not only for them to establish themselves here, but also for future growth. And Indiana Packers is actually in excess of 60–70% of water and wastewater utilities.
The ability to have enough water to supply our needs, and also enough proper pre-treatment and post-treatment for wastewater discharge, allows us to continue operations and to expand in the future.
TIF helps existing companies expand. Corporations have plants located all over the world. They can choose to expand anywhere. TIF monies help sway companies to grow in Indiana.
Many of our competitors chose Mexico simply because they have a lot lower labor rates, and therefore their overall cost for manufacturing could be lower. We at Subaru wanted to continue our success here in Indiana and wanted to bring over the Impreza for production here. So we went to our parent company and said, if we were able to get support from the local government to help level that playing field, would it be possible to bring the Impreza here? And they agreed with us, based on the fact that we got $1.2 million in infrastructure improvements through tax increment financing, in addition to $750,000 to help train our workers. Very important to level that playing field.
Like Subaru, Alcoa sees the importance of continuing its success in Indiana. A driving factor in the decision to add a new aluminum lithium plant to their Lafayette facility was the community's demonstrated commitment to the manufacturer.
The competition for this facility was brisk, and there were multiple locations within Alcoa that wanted to land the facility. For Alcoa, it becomes a business decision as to which location to choose. And so the TIF grant was critical in that it supported the business case for us that said, this will be a lower cost facility than the others. It's located in a region, in a county, in a state, in a city that wants to grow with Alcoa.
Typically, infrastructure is equated with physical capital, but there is also human capital, the workforce. A pre-screened and trained workforce enables a new or expanded plant to be up and running faster and smarter. TIF provides funding to specifically train employees to fit the needs of manufacturers through an advanced manufacturing program.
It was really the brainchild of a variety of people coming together to say, what can we do to prepare the workforce? Since the program began being offered here through our corporate college, it is now spread across the state.
I think it's important to note that the Ivy Tech training program for certified production technicians holds the students accountable for being on time, being there for every classroom session, participation, going through a drug screen, all things that are important to an employer like Nanshan.
Speaking as the current board chairman for the Indiana Manufacturers Association, the access to the TIF funding is critically important. Manufacturers across the state share similar challenges in finding the skilled talent that they need for the jobs that they're adding to their organizations, or as the jobs are changing in their organizations. So those the access to those dollars really helps in upgrading the skill sets by providing that special training for individuals to fill those jobs across the state. And I think it's one of the things that separates us from a lot of states.
Lafayette, Indiana transformed a blighted, dangerous apartment complex into an inviting, thriving neighborhood.
Everyone was afraid. You didn't go out at night. You didn't send your children to play to the school because they sat on the playground and sold drugs. I could watch them from my home. And they were not shy about it. There were thugs and thieves roaming the streets. You didn't leave anything in your yard because it wouldn't be there the next day. And you didn't leave your cars unlocked.
A team from agencies across the community leveraged TIF funds to obtain additional millions in federal grants to transform the rundown area. Today, Chatham Square, named after the Chatham family who farmed the property until the 1950s, uplifts the spirit of the long-established Glen Acres neighborhood.
Well, there's no doubt that getting rid of the old Bridgeway apartments and the new Chatham Square development really was one of the transformative things we've been able to do when it really comes to neighborhood stabilization. It got rid of, quite frankly, one of the areas in town that was our highest crime rate. That crime spilled into other neighborhoods surrounding the Bridgeway apartments. And Chatham Square really took all of that and turned that back into a community. And really the surrounding neighborhoods saying, we want to be a part of that also. We want this to really feel like a neighborhood, like a community.
It's turned out to be wonderful. It looks like it's a safe environment, it's a clean environment, there are waiting lists to get in here. And they've done exactly what they said they were going to do. They have held them to standards that no other complex does. They are drug tested, they're required to have employment, and there are occupancy limits that are adhered to. That never happened before.
A city's downtown, its center and heart, hums with an energy that must be valued and cultivated. When a downtown thrives, all of a community thrives.
Well, the downtown is important to the tax base because on a square foot basis, the downtown property owners pay more than any other area of the county. So those taxes that are generated in the very densely populated and very densely developed area actually support the entire community.
There's TIF dollars in the Renaissance Place, which is a really neat redevelopment of downtown. And you know, that's close to Reilly Plaza, the Myers Bridge, which is really a focal piece of our community. And so that to me is an important piece because it also helped bring about that thought of we can do retail, we can do banking, we can do upscale living, a little bit higher end of places for people to live downtown. And so, you know, that's a project that stands out for me as that's been a catalyst for some other things to take place downtown that said, you know, this can work.
Also in downtown Lafayette, an innovative co-working studio has brought a fresh and dynamic feel to the city.
We are in Matchbox Co-working Facility, which is a relatively new facility, an idea for Lafayette and really the nation as a whole. And it's basically shared office space. So what we're targeting here is these folks that you might see at the coffee house on their laptop or something, or they're working from their home. These are people that don't have an office, that are, you know, again, working from their home or some other spot. They can come here and have an office environment to work in, but more importantly, they can come to a place where they can collaborate with others. So there's other like-minded entrepreneurs here.
Well, I think, you know, there's a lot of talent in this community. There's a lot of people with great ideas that really are looking for ways to help bring those out and develop them. But we really didn't have a facility like Matchbox where that was possible here in Lafayette. And working with a lot of different groups and some really smart people, we've been able to put together not just a facility, because it's not just about the bricks and the mortar, it's also about the environment, about the thought process and the creativity and the willingness to say it's okay to fail. We want people to try new things because we know eventually products will be developed, companies will be developed, and Matchbox encompasses all those. A really good design with the right environment. We want creative people, we want people to try new things, and so Matchbox kind of brings all that together, and on top of that, it's in a nice historic building that was reused too.
The result you want from TIF is new investment job creation, and that's what Matchbox is doing. After 8 months, we have a company that's been a member here that has merged with a company out in Illinois, and now they're going to have their R&D facility here in Lafayette outside of Matchbox in an office in the downtown. So it'll be about 35 to 40 employees, engineers, software engineers, and customer service reps. We're very excited about this new economic development opportunity, these new jobs and investment that'll be created right here.
With foresight, planning, and synergy among leaders, tax increment financing, TIF, can transform a community, generate new business, new investment, jobs and infrastructure, create neighborhoods and self-sufficient, productive citizens.
What's unique about our community is the fact that we all work together. I mean, whenever we put an incentive package together for a potential company or a potential expansion, it includes Greater Lafayette Commerce, the City of Lafayette, the City of West Lafayette, Tippecanoe County, and the State of Indiana. We all work together to make sure that we're doing what's best for the citizens.
It also sends a very clear message about the desire of the state, of the county, of the city to have an expansion in their area. So rather than just providing lip service, saying, we want you, you back it up with an economic stimulus, which is really powerful in the decision-making process.
Well, I think what you have to look at when you're talking about local tax increment financing or any type of local incentives from be it city government, county government, it's very important to look at the multiplier effect. How many jobs are you actually going to create by virtue of the project that you're willing to invest in? It's not a matter of risking to try and create a few jobs. It's a matter of investing to create a large number of jobs. And when you have manufacturing in particular, but actually auto manufacturing especially, it has a tremendous multiplier effect.
I tell people a story about my experience in coming to Lafayette. The first week that I was here, at the end of the week, I drove back to Michigan to my home with a smile on my face, and my wife said, "How did things go this week?" And I said, "You're not going to believe it." At the end of 5 days, I had 40 business cards. I'd met the mayor, I'd met the president of the Chamber of Commerce, I'd met the critical people from Work One, I'd met Ivy Tech leaders.
Because we compete in a global economy, we need to be able to react at the speed of business. And TIF dollars allow us to do that. When it comes to infrastructure, job training, the needs that businesses have to compete in a global economy, we need those TIF dollars to be able to react quickly. Their window of opportunity in the competitive market that they're in it becomes critical for us to have those TIF dollars to react like they have to react at the speed of business.
Reacting to the speed of business, that's what tax increment financing makes possible. When civic and business leaders work together to pull on their community's bootstraps, TIF is available to transform a region and its people quickly and efficiently. Local and state economic growth and high quality of life enables leaders to compete globally through tax increment financing.
So, Madam Chair, as you can see, that was a very high-level overview of how the program works across the country, and it is definitely applicable here in New Hampshire. And I thought it was a good example of just really outlining the general concepts of all the differing ways you can use TIF dollars. Oh, I think that might still be on.
Bring experts in the field to discuss those things which impact us as we go about our...
There we go. My apologies. Again, I thought the video, although a little lengthy, was a good way of giving a high-level overview of all the differing ways TIF dollars can be used. Traditionally, most people consider it for infrastructure improvements, and absolutely, I think that that is the one that we would be talking about. But you can use it for programming. You can use it for maintenance. Okay. It is a tool that you can use to help close gaps in projects, as talked about, and really help make projects pencil, which means that you can help make them actually finance and come to fruition. The ultimate goal is to try to increase your tax base, try to increase jobs, try to stabilize neighborhoods. So up on the screen in front of you is a highlighted version of the graph that I was speaking about earlier, which along the vertical axis shows the dollars. That's essentially the value or the tax dollars that you'd be, that's the value that you'd be creating. Along the horizontal axis, that is the years that you'd be talking about for a TIF district and the TIF program. And then in the middle is the tax dollars collected. The darker purplish blue, that's your base valuation. So that's what you'd be essentially freezing your assessments at. And then as development comes in, you'd be bumping up that increment. That's that beigeish yellow color. And that is the increment that you'd be looking to dedicate into the TIF program, into the TIF fund. So essentially, what are we talking about? And this is just a narrative version of the visual that I showed you. So if you have a base valuation of $3 million and you have a project coming in that's going to be a value of $50 million, you're talking about a captured value of a $47 million. And so what's that mean from a tax revenue perspective? Well, remember, we had that base value of $3 million. I'm going to use round numbers here, and we're going to say it's a $20 tax rate. We know that going to the base tax valuation of the tax revenue will be $60,000. That will not be captured. And again, I want to point out this is a very hypothetical and exaggerated example, but the increment that you'd be creating is $940,000. That would be the money available for the TIF program. So I wanted to give you a very high-level, exaggerated version of what we're talking about. So again, how did we get there? We know that you take your value, you divide it by the mill rate, and then you multiply it by your tax rate. And that's how you arrive at your tax dollars. So where we are today. So I'm asking for your consideration and approval of a plan that was filed with you, which is 100 and some pages, which outlines basically what is a management document. What I'm looking to do tonight and this evening is set up the governance structure of how this TIF program would be executed here in Nashua, using the template that has already been tried and true, and that's the one that was done previously here. And all we're looking to do this evening is to expand on it. So in the document itself, and I'm not going to go through it in any detail, but I do want to just call out that there are very specific purposes and objectives that we will be trying to accomplish in the TIF program. When that first is to improve and upgrade public infrastructure and public amenities that encourage and create opportunities for businesses to locate and expand within the district, enhance employment and residential opportunities for areas for residents within the district, expand the property tax base, promote the natural asset, and to design activities that are respectful for the natural environment and how it can complement the downtown, provide for better utilization of recreational resources and opportunities that exist within the riverfront and the walking bike paths all located within the downtown, which can provide better connectivity and a better trail system. The district boundary itself, which I will speak to in a moment, is essentially 1.8 miles. It goes from the Mine Falls Park through the mill yard down, ending on on Bridge Street, and it is approximately 28.5 acres. So that is the high-level specifics of the TIF management document. The one thing I want to make sure is clear is we will need to always come back before the Board of Aldermen to amend this document for any specific projects that we are looking to undertake. So if we were to look to do anything as outlined, we would have to come back before you and amend the document. This is a governance structure that allows us to basically set aside the money, which we need to do per the state statute. And we have to do that before April 1st. And then once we develop a project-specific funding, we have private sector dollars that we can leverage, or if we have programs that we're looking to implement or maintenance or services we're looking to provide, all that will be outlined in greater detail and brought before you for consideration to be adopted in the plans before we execute it on spending any money. Why are we doing all this? Because we are trying to actually implement the Nashua Downtown Riverfront Plan. This document was done over the summer through the leadership of Director Marchant. When I first came to the city some year and a half ago, during my interview, I actually had a couple members of the Board of Aldermen ask me, what are some of the priorities we should have or we should look at from an economic development perspective? It came up on a couple of occasions that we have a river that's underutilized. It's a natural asset and it's underperforming. And I committed to making it a priority to enhance that because it's a competitive advantage that we have that we should be looking to bolster. And the way to do that is through this TIF program. And we did it the right way by starting out with developing a plan that had consensus by the community, that articulates some goals that we would be looking to accomplish. The big ideas, connectivity, so that river walk that I discussed earlier, doing better environmental stewardship, creating better access to the river, creating green space and recreational opportunities, ensuring that we are flood resilient and making sure we are preserving our natural asset for the years to come, and ultimately trying to create some economic opportunities around the riverfront. So how do you do all that? Well, you do it through a TIF. And when we went through the conversations this summer, we made that clear to all the various stakeholders that this plan is a great consensus document that will help us, guide us in our thought process. But ultimately, to operationalize it, you need grants, you need tax dollars, and the way to do it is through a TIF program. So specifically, some of the comments that we heard along the way were the expansion of the Riverwalk, looking to do something better with the Greeley House, improving lighting around the water's edge, fountains, a dock, plazas, courtyards, beautification in general, and making sure that we were bicycle friendly were the highlights that we all want to make sure we invest potential TIF dollars in. But remind you, we would all need to come back before you to gain that approval. Getting a little bit more into the numbers. Well, before I get to the numbers, I just want to call out the map. So the map that that will be dedicated to this TIF district is the yellow. It's a little hard to see on this screen, but it is in your document. And it basically shows you from the Broad Street Parkway to the Main Street Bridge. It's just an expansion of the current TIF program. The riverfront plan itself, I should say, is a multi-phased plan that is much larger than this TIF district. The mayor wanted to take an incremental, phased type approach. He wanted to start here, and if it goes well and it is successful, to telegraph this a little bit, we'll be back before you looking to expand the district for the entire boundaries that were delineated, but we wanted to walk before we started to run. So the numbers, just to quickly talk about what we're getting at here. These are projections, estimates, very rough numbers, but gives you an order of magnitude of what we're talking about. So we have a current assessment of around 35 million-ish. Just using a previous tax rate of $25. We're projecting that we believe we'll see some new development up by the Broad Street Parkway on either side of the bridge. We believe that we'll see some development around Clock Tower. We know Brady Sullivan's project is underway, but it's not complete, so we would see a little capture of value of that. All in, I'm being very conservative in my estimation. I would rather be conservative and come in under than misrepresent anything and have that cause problems. So I'm saying we'll potentially see 10, could be as high as 20 million. We don't know. None of us have a crystal ball, but that would generate approximate increment that we would see year over year of approximately $250,000. What does that mean? That means that we could potentially come before you for a bond allocation request of approximately $4 million, or we could use the cash to service any type of maintenance, programming, whatever the will and desire may be. But it would go directly back into the district. So with that said, Madam Chair, that's a very high-level overview of TIF and how we would like to use it to develop and improve the downtown, and in particular the underperforming asset of the Nashua River. And happy to take any questions.
Alderman Gidge.
Most of what we saw up there was the money being used to get business into the city. Also to train people or businesses here to train their people to bring more people in. You're talking about the monies that we will get used for like the Riverwalk. Is there anything set up to attempt to bring businesses in that showed us up there on the screen?
So, Madam Chair, if I may, what was referenced in the first half of the video was not the effort per se to market to bring businesses in. What it was using TIF dollars to close the gap to make a project feasible because there was Herculean costs on the project. So the GE Aviation, there was roadway work that was necessary and whatnot, and they were able to use the TIF dollars, and so it wasn't coming from the private sector to expedite that infrastructure improvement, and it was what helped bring the deal over the finish line. I want to be clear that what we're representing here tonight is not one specific project. What we're talking about is setting up the governance structure that will allow us to come back before you with specific projects. And what I believe we will be looking to use the money for is, and as the plan outlines, is following the guide of the Downtown Riverfront Development Plan, which is a lot of infrastructure type improvements to enhance the waterway.
Can I add up to that? Sorry. Through the Riverfront Development Plan, we built a lot of partnerships with the businesses and the owners of the property around this area. And it is absolutely, I think, something that in discussing with them that they supported and that they think would be an asset to future expansions, future things that they'd like to do, that we could also talk about closing gaps on projects. But there is no specific projects yet.
Good, thank you. Thank you very much.
Alderman Dowd.
2 questions. One, if this is approved by the full board, when or if does it impact the tax base for property taxes?
So, great question, Madam Chair, if I may. It doesn't affect the current property taxes. So That's the beauty of this program. You're kept whole. Your current base stays as is. The future increment on new development. And right now, the only new development that's currently out there is Brady Sullivan's project, which has already been ongoing, so we will not capture the full value of Brady Sullivan's project. We know that that project was assessed at, and I'm going to use rough numbers, approximately $1 million, maybe $2 million. That would have been the base. The project probably, when it closes out, will be somewhere around $16 million. It's currently getting assessed at right now 5 to 7. So we have a potential to capture another, 6, 8, depending on how fast they go. And statutorily, by our process and the state governance assessing model, there is a day where anything after this date cannot be included in your increment calculation, and that's April 1st, which is why we're here tonight to hopefully have this voted and approved, because if not, we miss all of the next year, because it would be automatically put towards the property card of the following year.
Alderman Dowd?
So the other thing is, based on what I've seen, I'm assuming that if we improve the river area, that will draw people to want to develop along the river. If somebody wanted to put a hotel in or a nice restaurant, they probably wouldn't like the view at the moment. But what we're anticipating doing would make that much more attractive, and also would probably increase the property values of those developments, which in the end brings back more money to the city.
Madam Chair, that's exactly right. That's why you do it. It is the philosophy of investment begets investment, and rising tides lifts all boats. So if you start to do this, you'll start to stabilize neighborhoods and improve the community. I think the video at the end was very clear about specifics on how that worked.
Alderman Lopez?
One of the things in the video that made me a little bit nervous was where they were talking about rundown neighborhoods where all the crime was happening, everything, and they were like, and we invested and we rebuilt things, and like they're totally different houses, so yeah, they sure invested. So I had actually talked to Director Marchant about the possibility of this inadvertently gentrifying specific neighborhoods, and she had pointed out that the district that we're talking about doesn't have neighborhoods per se. It has apartment buildings like Clock Tower or the future, the Cotton Mill, or those future buildings. So I'm pretty confident we're not going to be bulldozing neighborhoods or anything. But there was in the plan a section where it talks about relocation of businesses and individuals. So I just wanted to touch on why that's in there and what's meant by that.
Director Cummings?
Thank you. So to be compliant with the RSA, this we had to make sure we dedicated a section in the plan speaking to what would need to occur if we were ever to go in that direction. It is not our interest or intention to do anything like that. This, again, is just creating the governance model so we could have a conversation about what I believe is the adoption of the riverfront plan, which is really just infrastructure improvements along the waterway.
It was a very small section, so I just wanted to raise a question because it looked like it was just added in to be thorough. I also noticed on the list of different alternative, like once you start a project, you have to have a diversified funding source. So I just want to repeat my annual complaint that I think CDBG is something we do really well. It's listed as a potential funding source for projects, and personally, I would be not enthusiastic about trying to change that model for development purposes when it serves an immediate and existing community need.
Thank you. Your point is well taken. Again, just to try to be all-encompassing, we just wanted to put in all the potential programs.
It looks better when you have a lot of bullet points than like 2.
Yeah, that could be used. CDBG is one of them. Not saying that we will take advantage of that. I will also want to take this opportunity to point out, and I'm not saying we would do this, but I know of other communities who have set aside TIF funds to help current residents in neighborhoods that have the fear of being dislocated because of gentrification, support them with additional assistance as non-uncommon practice of creating a revenue stream to help your current clientele so they feel welcomed and they don't feel like they're being pushed out of their community. That is one of the great ways and resources to use your TIF funds for. Again, we're not going to talk about specifics, but I wanted to make sure you knew that that was one of the ways you could use your funds.
Well, I appreciate that observation just because this part of the TIF district doesn't seem to include the other side of the river, but the riverfront development plan does include the area by the library walk. And I'm imagining the neighbors whose backyard is the library walk might feel like, what are you doing in my backyard? What's going to happen next?
Alderman Clay.
Thank you. So the TIF money stays within the district that it's collected from?
Yes.
Is that correct? So it would be just the riverfront, and currently it's just going to go from the bridge all the way, I can see from there. It's not going to be on the Peddler side or the Margarita side or BAE then. Is that correct?
On the Peddler side, there's an existing TIF.
Oh, okay.
So that will stay in place. However, on the library side, if you will, there would be no TIF on that side as of today. If all goes well, maybe we'll be back and we'd be looking to do that.
Alderman Dowd.
A couple things. The TIF really helped to change a blighted area, as we all know, into a really nice area over by Peddlers. That used to be a very bad place. So in this instance, if this gets passed, tax money from that area would be put into a special account to be used for development. Two questions. One, the river project seems like, and I think we may have talked about this before, probably too big to be run without help. Are we looking to develop some kind of I don't want to say committee, some kind of a group that's going to oversee this? And the other question associated with that is, as I believe you said before, that any expenditure of those funds in this area would come back to the Board of Aldermen for approval? Okay.
Director Cummings.
Madam Chair, so the answer is yes to your questions. So first, what I would envision and recommend is that the river walk, if that is the first priority, and I believe it would be, to get endorsed and move forward from an infrastructure perspective, also have a component where through a private sector RFP, contractor would be brought on board to help with the maintenance and to make sure that we had an operational plan as well as a capital plan, and we would use the money from that to service that improvement. I think that is a best practice that is used across the country to ensure that we are taking care of our priorities once they've been met.
Follow up, as a logistician, one thing that concerns me all the time is we build something and then forget about it. So I'm going to make the presumption, correct me if I'm wrong, that these TIF money can also be used to maintain whatever we do in that area and keep it up and running.
Yes. Yes, and again, I think it would be through an RFP, a private sector vendor who would be accountable to a board. Our current TIF has a board and an administrator. The Director of Economic Development is the administrator of the board to the board. So there is a TIF committee already established that would be if you want to think of it in a way, it's like the Downtown Improvement Committee. It's a very similar model to our Downtown Improvement Committee. And again, it would be a similar type of governance process. What would come back before the Board of Aldermen would be an amendment to the plan, and that amendment would articulate how the differing financial plan would work and what projects would be expended or spent money on. And then it would be committee that would have to actually execute on the project.
All set, Alderman Dowd?
Well, just one other follow-up just came to mind. Have we already addressed any environmental pollution agency concerns about working in this area?
So I'm going to defer to Director Marchand. My understanding is that was part of the plan that was developed this summer.
It certainly was. So some of the biggest concerns that we got from the public was the invasive species and the inability to access the river and the lack of maintenance. And the city, with its partner with the cotton mill development, actually did a lot of invasive removal, also with some other funding sources in the past 3 to 5 years. But because of the lack of maintenance, it's all completely grown back in. And so the point this time is to do it right and to be ready to maintain it because we have a dedicated funding source. We are on a very limited budget and we have so many resources and it's very hard for the city to get to all of our resources. So that is a huge part of the plan and it's a huge part of what we heard from the public about what was most important to them. And as far as other contamination or cleanup or issues, there are no other known ones at this time, and we've worked with all of our property owners along the river, depending on whatever they're doing at any point, to take care of things.
All set, Alderman Dowd? Alderman O'Brien and then Alderman Malisegolia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is perfect for this particular area. I mean, this is a part of the city that's a diamond in the rough that really needs, and my personal walking many of the surrounding areas on it, I've seen some of the investment we put in, and unfortunately, some of the beer cans and trash that's on there. But I think once the people see the investment that we're putting into it, it will be good. But my question is on the TIF itself. Have there, which I support, don't read between the lines, but I'm saying, have there been communities that have revoked a TIF? And is there a procedure to that? So in case something unforeseen in the city's future, is there a fail-safe to that?
Director Cummings.
Yes, absolutely, and that's a great question, Madam Chair, and through you to the board. One, the body can pull back and revoke the TIF at any time for moving forward, except for funds that have been already obligated. So if you issue a bond and you have debt service, you're going to need to maintain that until your debt service runs out. But you can, with free cash money, if you will, free and clear cash money, you can eliminate your TIF at any point in time. To the second part of the question, which is a really important one, and one I have taken some time to study, is the best practices one should invoke if you are going to adopt a TIF. And the reason why you should do that is because there can be waste, there can be abuse, and not to name names, but I think the city of Chicago, if you were to do any research, has proven out that fact that without adopting some best practices, you can get into some real trouble. So one best practice, you want to leverage your private sector dollars. So you want to see and develop a certain ratio. Maybe it's 10-to-1 for every $10 the private sector invests. Maybe you do $1 of public investment. That is just an example. By no means do you have to follow that metric, but you want to leverage private sector development. You also want to make sure you have a development agreement in place. You don't want to be doing anything on the wish and the hope and prayer that if you build it, they will come. That is something that can get communities into trouble. I can tell you here locally in the state of New Hampshire, the city of Concord has done an excellent job actually of developing some best practices and some rules that they live by, and I would suggest that we would emulate those types of rules to ensure that we do things on the up and up. And the last part is making sure we have accurate and clear reporting. That would be really important to me, so everyone knows exactly how the TIF dollars are being used in the community.
Fine. All set, Alderman O'Brien?
Also, thank you, Madam Chair.
Alderman Malisegolia.
Yes, I am. First of all, Director Cummings and Director Marchant, thank you for this evening. And I think it's really important to remember why April 1st is so important in terms of capturing the most we can. When I had raised my hand, it was while Alderman Dowd was asking questions, and I was just going to ask you to basically summarize what is on the last page of the memo you gave us regarding how the TIF is administered and when and how it can be dissolved, basically for people who are listening. And I think in responding to Alderman Dowd and responding to Alderman O'Brien, you have done that. But I think it's important that anyone who's watching this evening or who listens in the next week or so understands what we're about to do and that it will have its own advisory board, but there will be reporting back to us. And as you indicated, it can be dissolved once the obligations are met.
Yes.
And could we have this attached to the minutes so people can also reference this for this meeting? Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Jettie?
So I'm wondering, I think I've seen the master plan is to continue the Riverwalk to the east side of Main Street. Right now the Riverwalk goes, on the north side of the river and by Peddler's Daughter. And I thought the plan was to loop the Riverwalk around so that it came back across the south side of the river and to the east of Main Street, all the way to the where there's a walkway right at the dam there behind the library. It seems like a glaring omission to my eye. I'm wondering why.
Chair?
So that was one of the phases of the Riverfront Plan, right? The Riverfront Plan was broken down into 4 sections, and this was the 3rd section. The focus of this portion of the TIF is to start with that piece between the Main Street Bridge and the Broad Street Parkway, to focus the funds there, to get us started to walk, not run, like Tim said, to see if we can focus on that piece, and from there to potentially, with success, add on this area, absolutely, which has a different feel, a little bit of different improvements involved here, and then also to do the first section, which is further closer to Mines Falls Park as well. So we were just focusing on this middle section for the initial TIF.
Okay.
It's possible that we could take this all up at the committee meeting, all this debate on the TIF. I mean,
Actually, that's probably should be.
I mean, you can continue, Alderman Jettie, but I think it might be more appropriate to take all this up at the committee
We'll be here all night. So.
We're here.
Yeah, we're here.
after the hearing. Is that all right?
Okay.
Okay.
So I guess I'm unclear. Are we not asking questions now?
We can continue with the questions. I just want to put it out there that there's a meeting after the public hearing to discuss the whole TIF.
Is there anyone from the public here to speak?
Well, if I may, I guess for new members of the board, typically a public hearing is a presentation to give information. And then we ask members of the public who may be here to speak in favor of or against, very similar to what happens at planning board and zoning. And then the hearing is closed, and then that's our time to go into whatever meeting. Sometimes it's a full Board of Aldermen meeting, sometimes it's another committee meeting to then ask questions. So I think that's what Alderman Wilshire was talking about, not to end questioning, but to talk about the appropriateness of what we're doing, because at some point on her script it says ask for statements for those in favor and opposed, and then
Right.
if there are none, to close the public hearing and go into the meeting. So I think it was just the procedure she was talking about.
Okay, well, I'm not I don't see anybody from the public here.
That's true. But
So whether I ask the questions now or in the next phase of this, that's up to you, I guess,
okay.
Madam
I
Chairman.
think we're going to get on with the continue with the public hearing and then turn this over to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. That's what you're having your meeting on, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Is that okay with everyone? Because I think really what we're doing is opening this up for the whole committee, but we want to move along with the public hearing. So, that said, I think what I'm going to do is, Director Cummings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to note for the record, because we are in a public hearing and this is just more of a housekeeping item, I would like the record to reflect that we properly notified all stakeholders as per the RSA, including the Board of Education and the county commissioners. So I just want to make sure that that's on the record.
Okay, very good. Thank you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open this public hearing up to the public. Anyone here who might want to give testimony in favor? You're it, Paul. Okay. Okay. Anyone want to give testimony in opposition? Again, I'm going to take testimony in favor. Testimony in opposition. Seeing none. Alderman Melissa.
Yes, I would move to adjourn.
Motion is to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned at 8:04. Thank you.